We've built a life together, only for him to tear it apart. My husband did not only betray our love, but he betrayed everything we stood for. But after my revenge, he wished to be dead than being alive. Watch my story until the end to see how I took back control in a way he never see coming and make sure he is a living corpse. Remember to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and tell us where in the world you are watching this video from. I'm Rachel Owens, and for years I had the kind of life that most women dream about. I was married to Ryan Owens, a man everyone admired, respected, and envied. He was successful, handsome, and charming, everything I thought I needed in a husband. We lived in a luxurious house in Miami, had friends who were always in awe of our perfect marriage, and shared a business that flourished. People would tell me how lucky I was, and I believed them. I had everything, until one day I didn't. It all started with a simple shift. Ryan began working late more often, coming home after midnight, and when he did, he would be distant, almost cold. At first, I thought it was just stress from his work. He had a big deal in the pipeline, and I told myself that's all it was. But over time, his distance became harder to ignore. We didn't have the same conversations anymore. Our dinners were quiet, and his phone. Well, his phone seemed to always be within arm's reach, but not for the reasons it used to be. I remember the day it hit me. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through some magazine, when Ryan's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Without thinking, I reached for it. The message was from someone named Emily Winters. The text: "I can't wait to see you tonight. Let's make it special." My heart dropped straight into my stomach. I knew I shouldn't have looked. I knew that the moment I decided to pick up his phone, I was crossing a line that would change everything. But I couldn't stop myself. I knew something was off, and this felt like the answer I had been avoiding. I stared at that message for what felt like hours. Emily Winters, who was she? He'd never mentioned her before. As I tried to convince myself that it meant nothing, I couldn't shake the sick feeling in my chest. I had to know more, so I dug. It didn't take long before I found the truth. Emily Winters wasn't just some coworker or business associate. No, she was his secretary. And from what I could gather, they'd been seeing each other for months. I sat there in complete disbelief, watching my whole world come crashing down in front of me. The man I trusted, the man I thought was my everything, had been having an affair. Ryan had been planning a trip to Hawaii with her. I felt a wave of rage, of betrayal, but mostly, I felt empty. How could he do this? How could the man who swore to love me above all else, the man who I had built my life with, betray me so thoroughly? The next morning, I confronted him. I had to. The lies between us were thick, and I could no longer ignore them. "Ryan, we need to talk," I said, sitting across from him at the kitchen table. His face was immediately guarded, but I could see the guilt creeping into his eyes. "Rachel, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice strained. He knew what was coming. "I know about Emily," I said, my voice low but steady. His face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "You're having an affair with her, aren't you? You've been seeing her behind my back." There was a long silence before Ryan let out a heavy sigh. Rachel, I didn't want to hurt you." I wanted to scream. How could he possibly think this wouldn't hurt me? But I didn't. I just stared at him, searching for any ounce of remorse, but all I saw was guilt. "I never meant for it to happen," he continued. "Emily, she made me feel alive again." Alive, I felt my chest tighten. How long had this been going on? I couldn't hold it in anymore. "So, what now, Ryan?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You're going to go to paradise with her while I'm here waiting for you, while I'm at home pretending everything is fine." He hung his head, unable to look me in the eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't want to hurt you. It just happened." Just happened? How could he say that to me, as if it was a simple mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment? The betrayal cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. But in that moment, something changed inside of me. A rage I didn't know existed was brewing beneath the surface. He thought he could play me for a fool, thought he could get away with this. Well, he was wrong. I could feel my mind racing with thoughts of revenge, of making him pay for what he had done. But I wasn't going to let him know that. No, I had to be smart. I had to be patient. "Ryan, I've had enough," I said, standing up. But before you go off to your little paradise with Emily, I want you to understand one thing. You're going to pay for this. I'm not the same woman I used to be, and I will destroy everything you care about, just like you've destroyed me." His eyes widened, but I could see a flicker of fear, though he quickly masked it with a weak smile. "Rachel, you don't mean that. We can fix this." Fix it? The idea of fixing this was laughable. There was no fixing this. The damage had been done, and he was going to learn just how serious I was. I turned and walked out, leaving Ryan standing there, unsure of what was to come. But I already knew what I had to do. The next few days were a blur of cold strategy. I knew I had to plan carefully, and that's exactly what I did. While Ryan and Emily made their way to Hawaii, I started laying the groundwork for my revenge. First, I contacted a private investigator, David Harker. I needed someone to dig into Ryan's life, to uncover every little secret I didn't know about him. I wasn't going to stop at just the affair. No, I wanted everything. I wanted his career, his reputation, and everything else he held dear. As the days passed, I started putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Ryan's infidelity wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a pattern I could use to destroy him. I had a plan, and I would execute it with precision. The truth was, I had been playing the dutiful wife for too long. I'd supported him through everything, but this was my breaking point. Now it was my turn to take control. By the time Ryan returned from his paradise, with Emily, everything had changed. Ryan thought he was coming home to a wife who would forgive him, but he was wrong. And now, I was ready to take everything he loved and destroy it. If you think you know where this is heading, trust me, you don't. What happens next will shock you. But I want to know, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Comment below, like this video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now let us continue. I can still remember the exact moment I realized that what I knew wasn't even the tip of the iceberg. The betrayal, the lies, none of it was what it seemed. If you've ever felt that gnawing feeling in your gut that there's something bigger, something darker hiding just out of sight, that was me. And once you start to dig, you can't stop. You find yourself in too deep, and no matter how hard you try to pull back, you're sucked into the storm. It all started one afternoon, right after I confronted Ryan about his affair with Emily. I thought I knew everything. I thought it was just about him cheating, about his betrayal, and that was painful enough. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about an affair. This was about control, about manipulation, and about something far darker than I could have imagined. I decided I needed to know more. I needed to dig deeper, not just into Ryan's relationship with Emily, but into his entire life. I was done being the clueless wife, sitting at home while he lived a life behind my back. It was time to turn the tables. That's when I reached out to David Harker, a private investigator I'd been referred to by a close friend. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. All I wanted was answers to the questions that had been gnawing at me for months, answers that would give me the leverage I needed to make Ryan feel the same devastation he'd put me through. David was thorough. He wasn't just digging into Ryan's personal life. He was going through everything: his financial records, his business dealings, his phone records, and yes, his relationship with Emily. What David uncovered changed everything. Ryan's affair wasn't some random mistake, a slip of the moment. No, it was carefully planned, meticulously timed, and driven by more than just lust. Emily wasn't some other woman looking for a fling, she was a strategist. She had been grooming Ryan for months, planting seeds of doubt about our marriage, making him question everything. She wasn't just taking advantage of him, she was manipulating him in ways I never even realized. She knew exactly what she was doing, how to get under his skin, how to make him feel like I wasn't enough. But that wasn't even the worst part. As David continued his investigation, I started to uncover more disturbing details. Emily wasn't just Ryan's lover. She had infiltrated his life in ways I never thought possible. She was after more than just his heart. She was after his power. And I was left wondering just how long she had been working on her plan. Had she been trying to take me out of the picture for months, or was I just collateral damage in her pursuit of everything Ryan had? I had always known Ryan was a bit of a workaholic, But what I hadn't known was how deeply his business was intertwined with the affair. Emily wasn't just helping Ryan with the paperwork or answering his calls. She was deeply involved in his finances, in decisions that could have put both of us in danger. She had been with him every step of the way, shaping his choices, giving him advice, and even controlling parts of the business we'd worked so hard to build together. What did all this mean? It meant that my life was at risk. My financial security was slipping away, and I hadn't even realized it. Ryan had been lying to me, not just about Emily, but about our entire future. And that was something I could no longer ignore. But the more David uncovered, the darker it got. Ryan's financial dealings, his shady investments, his hidden accounts. There were holes in everything I thought I knew. He was involved in illegal activities, taking risks that put both of us in jeopardy. And Emily, she was right there with him, orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. This was a betrayal of everything I had built, everything I trusted. The depth of his deception was suffocating. It wasn't just the affair. It was the layers of lies, the manipulation, the money he'd been siphoning from our accounts. And that's when it hit me. Ryan wasn't just hurting me emotionally. He was robbing me blind. He'd been draining our wealth, making deals with people I didn't know, putting our future in jeopardy, all while pretending everything was fine. He was treating me like a fool. But I wasn't a fool. I was done being the woman who stood by while he tore apart everything I cared about. I sat in my living room that night, staring at the report David had sent me, my mind racing. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of anger and disbelief. Everything I thought I knew about my husband, about my life, was crumbling right in front of me. I couldn't let this go. No, I had to make him pay. The plan was simple. I would use everything I had learned to bring him down, but I had to be careful. Ryan was smart. He wasn't going to fall easily. Emily had her claws in him deep, and I knew that confronting him now would only push him further away. I needed to stay calm, stay strategic. This wasn't just about getting back at him. It was about taking control of my life, of everything he'd taken from me. I started by contacting my lawyer. I had to protect myself before anything else. I couldn't let him destroy me, financially or emotionally. The next steps were crucial. I was going to drain him, strip him of everything he thought he had. He wanted to take everything from me. Fine, I would take everything from him. And then there was Emily. She wasn't just a casualty of Ryan's betrayal. She was a player in this game, too. She thought she had won, thought she had him all to herself. But I had plans for her, too. I wasn't going to let her take what was mine without consequences. The next few days were a blur of planning. I knew that I had to act quickly before Ryan caught on to what I was doing. Every move had to be calculated. Every step had to be executed with precision. He wasn't just going to lose his money, he was going to lose everything. His career, his reputation, his friends, and most importantly, his sense of control over me. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming everything I had lost and ensuring Ryan knew the cost of his betrayal. He thought he could ruin me. He thought he could destroy me and get away with it. But I wasn't going to let that happen. What would you do if you uncovered everything you thought you knew about your life was a lie? How far would you go to make them pay for what they've taken from you? Have you ever felt like you were walking on the edge, just one wrong step away from everything crashing down? That's exactly how I felt in those days after I uncovered the extent of Ryan's betrayal. On the outside, everything was calm, quiet, almost normal. But on the inside, I was a storm waiting to break loose. And Ryan, he had no idea what was coming. It's strange, really, how life can seem perfect one moment, and then the next, it's like the rug has been pulled out from under you. That's exactly what happened to me. One minute, I was living the life I had dreamed about, wealth, luxury, love. The next, I was forced to confront the truth. Everything I had built with Ryan was a lie. But I wasn't going to rush into anything. No, I knew better than that. Patience. Strategy. If I wanted to break Ryan, I had to be smart about it. I had to make every move count. As Ryan and Emily frolicked in Hawaii, living their little fantasy, I stayed behind in Miami, playing the role of the dutiful wife. It felt like a game, one that I had been playing all along, and now I had the upper hand. I went to social events, smiled at everyone, and acted like everything was perfectly fine. But every time I smiled, it felt like my teeth were gritting harder, my jaw tightening, as I plotted how to destroy everything Ryan held dear. And that's when the plan really started to take shape. I wasn't just going to sit around and wait for Ryan to come back and act like nothing happened. No, I was going to strike first. I contacted David Harker, the private investigator I had hired. I needed to know everything: his business dealings, his investments, his connections. I wanted every skeleton in his closet exposed, and David was going to dig until there was nothing left to hide. The more David uncovered, the worse it became. Ryan wasn't just messing around with Emily. No, he was getting involved in shady deals that threatened everything we had. There were hidden bank accounts, shady investments, and risky financial dealings that put our entire fortune at risk. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart sank. For all these years, I had trusted him with everything, and he had been playing me for a fool. But I wasn't just going to let him destroy everything we'd built, everything I had built. Number Ryan wasn't going to get away with this. He wasn't going to walk away from this unscathed. So I started to take action. I went to meetings with the board members of our company. On the outside, I was calm, collected, the picture of grace and sophistication. But on the inside, I was seething with fury. Every time I sat in that conference room, surrounded by people who thought I had no idea what was really going on, I smiled, knowing full well I was one step ahead of them all. The more I learned, the more I realized just how deeply Ryan had dug himself into a hole. But what was worse, he had dragged me into it too. He had used my trust to manipulate me into believing everything was fine when, in reality, he had been betraying me on every level. I remember the moment it hit me, the moment I realized just how deep this went. Ryan and Emily weren't just lovers, they were partners. They were working together, manipulating me, using our business, using my trust, to build a future that didn't involve me. Ryan had been siphoning money, making risky investments, and jeopardizing everything I worked for, all while pretending to be the perfect husband. And Emily, she wasn't just some secretary. She was a snake in the grass, waiting for the right moment to strike. She had gotten into Ryan's head, convinced him that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't the woman he needed anymore. And she was right there, whispering in his ear, convincing him that leaving me would solve all his problems. But what Ryan didn't realize was that he was making the biggest mistake of his life. What he didn't realize was that I was about to take everything from him: his career, his money, his reputation, and I would do it in the most calculated, cold-blooded way possible. I went to my lawyer, Sophia Grant, and laid out my plan. I wanted everything. I wanted to dismantle Ryan's business. I wanted to expose him for the fraud he was. I wanted to take everything he had worked for and make it crumble to dust. I couldn't let him get away with this, not after everything he had done to me. Sophia, ever the professional, listened quietly as I outlined my plan. She didn't bat an eye when I told her I wanted to destroy Ryan's life. She knew that I was serious. She knew that I wasn't going to stop until I had everything in my grasp. But as I was planning the final blow, a part of me still couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan was trying to play me. I could see it in the way he acted when he texted me from Hawaii. The way he kept telling me how much he missed me, how everything was just a misunderstanding. He thought I was stupid. He thought he could win me back with a few sweet words and some empty promises. But this time I wasn't the fool. This time I was the one with the power. And as I sat at my desk, looking over the reports, planning my next move, I felt a rush of satisfaction. I had him exactly where I wanted him. Ryan had no idea what was coming. And Emily, she was going to learn the hard way that you don't play with people who have nothing left to lose. The days dragged on, and the tension between Ryan and me grew with each passing moment. He would text me, begging me to forgive him, telling me how much he regretted what he had done. But I wasn't buying it. I wasn't going to let him back into my life that easily. I had already made up my mind. I was done. But even as I continued with my plan, I couldn't help but wonder, had Ryan always been like this? Had I been so blind that I missed the signs? Or had I just chosen to ignore them? As the days passed, I found myself second-guessing everything. But deep down, I knew I was doing the right thing. I had to. I had to make sure that Ryan never forgot what he had done to me. Then, the unexpected happened. Ryan came back from Hawaii. He came back to a world that was no longer his. He walked through that door, expecting me to be waiting for him, expecting things to go back to normal. But they wouldn't, not anymore. What would you do if the person you loved, the person you trusted with everything, betrayed you in the worst way? Would you let them back in? Or would you take control and make them pay for their lies? Comment below and let me know your thought. Have you ever had that moment when everything you've worked for, everything you've trusted, suddenly feels like it's slipping through your fingers? That's exactly how I felt when Ryan came back from Hawaii, expecting me to simply forgive him, pretend like nothing ever happened. But that's not how revenge works. That's not how this game is played. When I saw him standing there, his eyes wide with desperation, my first instinct was to laugh. He thought that a few apologies, a couple of empty promises, would somehow erase everything he had done. He didn't realize that while he was off playing in paradise with Emily, I had been quietly pulling the strings. And now, the show was about to begin. Ryan's return was the beginning of the end for him. I had spent the last few weeks planning my next moves, and nothing, not even his tear-filled apologies, was going to stop me from executing my plan. He thought he was going to waltz back into my life and everything would magically return to the way it was. But there was no going back. Not now. Not after everything I had discovered. I had the upper hand now. The pieces were in place. Ryan had no idea that while he was enjoying his vacation with Emily, I was digging deep into his finances. I had already contacted David Harker, the private investigator I'd hired, and he had done a thorough job. He had uncovered things I never would have guessed. Ryan wasn't just messing around with Emily. He was involved in far more dangerous things. The company we had built together, the wealth we had accumulated, was at risk, all because of his shady business dealings. But it wasn't just his business that I was after. It was everything. I had already started moving behind the scenes, silently sabotaging his empire. Ryan thought I was just sitting at home, waiting for him to apologize. He didn't know that I was dismantling everything he cared about, one piece at a time. My first move was subtle, almost invisible. I started buying up shares in his company, quietly taking control of his holdings. I knew I needed to move cautiously. One wrong step, and I could tip him off. I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of knowing I was coming for him. But the real blow came when I started leaking information. Little by little, I let slip the details of Ryan's financial misdeeds to the press. It wasn't just his affair with Emily that I was exposing. It was the truth about his shady deals, the lies he had been feeding everyone for years. I made sure that every corner of his life was under scrutiny. There was no escape, not anymore. Ryan was a man who thrived on control, on having the power in every situation. He thought he could control me, manipulate me, break me down. But now it was my turn. And the best part? He had no idea what was happening until it was too late. The night I started the leaks, I couldn't help but smile. I knew exactly what this would do to him. The pressure was building, the weight of the lies he had been living with starting to crush him. But he wouldn't know it yet. No, I was going to watch him crumble from the shadows, savoring every moment of it. Days passed. The news hit just as I had planned. Articles started flooding in about Ryan's shady business practices. His company was under investigation. Investors were pulling out. People were questioning his decisions, questioning his integrity. But that wasn't all. I was making sure that every little detail of his affair with Emily was coming to light as well. I wasn't leaving anything untouched. He had betrayed me, humiliated me, and now it was time for him to face the consequences. Ryan tried to reach out to me, of course. He texted me constantly, called me, even showed up at the house, pleading with me to forgive him. But I didn't answer. Why would I? He had no idea that while he was begging for my forgiveness, I was the one pulling the strings. I was the one in control. I didn't need him anymore. And the best part, he didn't even see it coming. I couldn't help but feel a rush of satisfaction every time I watched the news or saw another article about his company's downfall. I had planned this moment for so long, and now it was happening. Slowly, but surely, he was losing everything. But the deeper I got into my plan, the more I realized just how far Ryan was willing to go. I wasn't just dealing with an affair anymore. I was dealing with a man who had lied, cheated, and manipulated everyone in his life, including me. The stakes were higher now. And Emily, she wasn't just an innocent bystander. No, she was as much a part of this as Ryan was. She had played her part in this game, and now she was going to pay for it. I decided to confront her. Not Ryan. Not yet. Emily was the one who had wormed her way into his life, convincing him he was better off without me. She had been the one to plant the seed of doubt in his mind, the one who had taken advantage of his insecurities. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. She was just as guilty as Ryan, and I was going to make sure she knew that. So I set up a meeting with her. I kept it casual, pretending that I wanted to make amends, pretending I wanted to let bygones be bygones. But I wasn't fooling her. Emily knew exactly what was coming. She could see the coldness in my eyes. She could sense the rage bubbling just beneath the surface. We met at a cafe, and the moment she sat down across from me, I could tell she was nervous. She tried to smile, but it was forced. She knew she was in the hot seat, and that's when I hit her with the truth. "Emily, you think you've won," I said, my voice steady but full of venom. "You think you've taken everything from me, that you've taken my husband, my life. But you're wrong. I'm not done, not by a long shot." Her eyes widened, but she didn't speak. She was still trying to play the innocent, pretending she had no idea what I was talking about. But I knew better. She had been in on this from the start. "You've been playing a dangerous game, Emily," I continued. "And now it's my turn. You're going to pay for everything you've done. You're going to lose everything just like Ryan is, and you'll never see it coming." Her face drained of color as she finally spoke, her voice shaking. "What do you want from me?" I leaned in close, locking eyes with her. "I want you to know that you're just as responsible for this as he is. You're going to watch as everything falls apart. And when it does, don't come crawling back, because I won't be here to pick up the pieces. If you think things are intense now, just wait until you see what happens next." Have you ever been standing on the edge, knowing that one more push, one more word will shatter everything around you? That's exactly how I felt as I watched everything I'd worked for, the perfect life. The perfect marriage, crumble away piece by piece. But the worst part, I was the one holding the hammer. I was the one deciding how far I was willing to go. Ryan had thought he could fool me, thought he could have his affair, take everything he wanted and get away with it. But here's the thing he didn't understand. A woman scorned doesn't just seek revenge. No, she takes back control. And that's exactly what I was doing. I had already exposed his financial secrets, leaked the affair to the press, and destroyed his business credibility. But I wasn't finished. No, I wasn't going to stop until every part of his life was in ruins. He had it coming, didn't he? He deserved to feel the crushing weight of every lie he'd told me, every moment he'd stolen from me, every ounce of trust he'd broken. The worst part, he still thought he could fix things. He still thought that all he had to do was apologize, beg for forgiveness, and everything would be fine again. But it wasn't fine. Nothing would ever be fine again. I had been sitting at home, planning the final stages of my revenge, when Ryan called. I'd been ignoring his calls, of course, but this time, something inside me clicked. I picked up the phone. "Rachel," his voice was shaky, desperate. "Please, we need to talk." I could hear the pain in his voice, and for just a second, part of me felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered everything, his lies, his betrayal, and that flicker of sympathy was gone in an instant. "Talk," I asked, my voice cold. "What's there to talk about, Ryan? You've already said it all. You've said everything you needed to say with your actions." There was silence on the other end. I could almost picture him, standing there trying to figure out what to say, how to make things right. But the truth was, it was too late. It had always been too late. "I've been thinking about everything," he said, his voice trembling. "And I'm so sorry, Rachel. I know I've hurt you, I know I've betrayed you, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I just want to make things right." I let out a humorless laugh, gripping the phone tighter. "You want to make things right? You've had months, Ryan, months, and what have you done? Nothing. You thought you could play with my life like it was a game. But it's not a game. It's my life and I'm done playing by your rules. I heard him take a deep breath, trying to steady himself. What do you want me to do? He asked. What do I want you to do? I repeated the words, feeling the anger rise up inside me. I want you to lose everything. I want you to feel what I've felt these past few months. I want you to see how it feels to be betrayed, to be lied to be used. And you will. You'll see it all crumbling down piece by piece, because you don't get to hurt me and get away with it. No one does. I could hear his breathing quicken. Rachel, please, please, I'm begging you. I didn't even flinch. Don't beg, it's too late for that. With that, I hung up the phone, but something inside me still felt unsettled. I had already exposed his financial crimes, ruined his business reputation, and now I had to deal with Emily. I had let Emily off easy before. She thought she was going to walk away unscathed, thinking she had won. But she hadn't. I wasn't done with her, not by a long shot. She had played the game just as well as Ryan, and now it was time to show her that there were consequences for everything. Emily wasn't going to walk away from this affair with her dignity intact, not when she had helped destroy my life. I decided to confront her. I wasn't going to wait for her to make the first move. I wasn't going to wait for Ryan to drag me back into the mess he had created. No, this was my mess now, and I was in control. The next day, I called Emily. Her voice was clipped, defensive when she answered. She knew what I wanted. Rachel, she said, her voice cold. I don't know what you think you're doing, but I don't want any part of this anymore. I've had enough. I let out a soft chuckle. Oh no, you don't get to walk away like that, not after everything you've done. There was a brief pause before she spoke again, her voice shaky now. I don't know what you want from me. I never wanted this to happen. It was Ryan's decision. You should be talking to him, not me. I could hear the panic in her voice, and that only fueled my anger more. She was trying to play the victim now, wasn't she? Like she had no part in this, but I knew the truth. She had seduced Ryan, convinced him that I wasn't enough, and pushed him further and further away from me. She had destroyed my marriage, and now she was going to pay. You think I'm going to let you get away with this? I said, my voice low and threatening. You think I'm just going to let you off the hook because you're sorry now? No, you're going to lose everything too, just like Ryan. And when everything you've worked for is destroyed, you'll finally understand what it feels like to be betrayed. You'll finally know what I've been through, and you won't like it. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, then a sharp intake of breath. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice trembling. Everything, I said, my heart pounding. You'll lose it all just like he will, and you'll watch as everything falls apart around you. And when it's all over, maybe then you'll finally understand the cost of betrayal. I hung up the phone, my mind racing with the next steps. Emily would feel the weight of her actions. I would make sure of it. The final pieces of my plan were falling into place, and as much as I hated to admit it, part of me felt satisfied. I had done what I set out to do. I had taken control of my life, and I had taken everything from Ryan and Emily. But there was still one thing left. One final move to make. What do you think? Should I keep going, or is it time to stop before it all spirals out of control? How far would you go for revenge? Leave a comment below. Your thoughts matter to me. Have you ever watched someone lose everything they've worked for, knowing that you were the one who caused it? The thrill of watching someone unravel, not out of malice, but because of the cold, calculated way you made them pay for everything they took from you. That's exactly how I felt as I stood there, watching Ryan's empire start to crumble. And the best part, he still didn't know it was me. It's a strange feeling, taking control after being betrayed. The power that comes from knowing exactly how far you're willing to go to make someone pay. Ryan thought he could break me. He thought he could cheat, lie, and manipulate his way through life. He thought I would sit back, be the good wife, and forgive him because that's what people like him always expect. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't the woman who would let him walk all over me. I had taken everything from him, the business, his reputation, the trust of his investors. And now, with Emily exposed, it was time for the final confrontation. Ryan came home late that night. He had been trying to call me all day, his desperate texts filling my phone, begging for my attention. But I wasn't interested in his excuses. I wasn't interested in hearing how sorry he was or how much he regretted it all. What good was his apology when everything I knew was a lie? He didn't even deserve a second chance. I had already made my decision. This time, when he walked through that door, everything would be different. There would be no pretending, no going back. This was the moment. This was the end. I heard him before I saw him. The sound of his key turning in the door was the cue I'd been waiting for. My heart raced, but not out of fear. No, it was excitement. Excitement for what was about to happen. The end of the game was finally here, and Ryan had no idea how close he was to losing it all. When the door opened, Ryan stepped inside, his tired eyes searching for me. The moment he saw me standing there, arms crossed, he knew something was different. "Rachel," his voice was shaky. "I'm sorry, I know I've messed up. Please, can we just talk?" I didn't move. I didn't say a word. "You're right, Ryan," I finally said, my voice calm but laced with venom. "We do need to talk, but not about what you think." His eyes narrowed. "What do you mean? What's going on?" "Sit down," I told him, my voice colder than I intended, but I didn't care. This was my moment, my turn to make him feel every ounce of the betrayal he had put me through. Ryan sat, his gaze fixed on me, confusion mixed with desperation in his eyes. He had no idea what was coming. "You've spent months destroying everything I worked for," I began, my voice growing steadier, more confident with every word. "You cheated on me. You lied to me. You manipulated me into thinking I was crazy, that I was the one who was wrong. But now it's my turn." "Rachel, please." "You don't." "No," I cut him off. "You don't get to speak right now. You had your chance. I gave you everything, my love, my trust, my life. And you decided to destroy it all for what? A woman who was never going to care about you the way I did." He flinched, but I could see it in his eyes. The realization was sinking in. He finally understood that I wasn't going to forgive him, that I wasn't going to play the victim anymore. "I have one question for you," I continued, my voice steady. "Did you ever really love me, Ryan? Or was I just another thing to control? Another thing to possess, to manipulate, to break down when you got bored?" He opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out. It was like he had lost his voice. Finally, he lowered his head, defeated. "I loved you," he whispered. "I really did. I didn't know how to fix things when they started falling apart." "Things started falling apart the moment you decided to lie to me, the moment you decided I wasn't enough," I said, my voice rising with each word. "And now you get to feel the consequences of your actions. You think this is about the affair, don't you? But it's not. This is about everything. This is about the lies, the deceit, the money you stole from me." Ryan's eyes widened as the realization hit him. "What do you mean, the money I stole?" "You think I didn't know, Ryan? I knew about your little side deals, the hidden bank accounts, the way you siphoned money from our company without a second thought. You were living a lie, pretending to be the perfect husband while you were slowly destroying everything we had." I watched his face turn pale, the color draining from his skin. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He had nothing left to say. But I wasn't done. "Do you remember when I said you were going to lose everything?" I asked, a wicked smile tugging at my lips. "Well, here's the first piece." I pulled out a folder from the table beside me. Inside were documents, proof of his shady dealings, proof of his financial crimes. I had made sure everything was in order, every detail painstakingly uncovered. "I'm sending this to the press tomorrow," I said, letting the words sink in. "The world will know exactly who you are. And once the story hits, your investors will pull out, your clients will walk away, and your business will be destroyed, just like you destroyed me." His face contorted with panic. "You can't do this. You can't." "I already have, Ryan," I interrupted. "You've been exposed. Your empire is crumbling, and there's nothing you can do about it. And Emily, well, she's just as guilty as you. She'll lose everything too. Because this isn't just about you anymore. This is about me taking back control of my life. I'm done being the victim." The silence that followed was thick, heavy with the weight of the destruction I had set in motion. Ryan didn't speak. He just sat there, helpless, as everything he had built, His business, his reputation, his life began to fall apart in front of him. "I guess this is it then," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "No," I said softly, finally letting the mask drop. "This is just the beginning. My revenge is reaching its peak, and the consequences are just starting to unfold. Do you think my ex-husband deserves what's coming to him, or is it too much? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe our channel. The final chapter of this story is just around the corner, and trust me, you won't want to miss it."